Another familiar face, Bill Scott. How's Bill these days?
Pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been a long time, Ian.
yeah.
Boy, oh boy,
Just,
good old days.
just hearing you talking about the East Coast, yeah, brought back a few memories.
Yeah, we had the best of times.
And the worst of times.
No, the worst of times were when we worked in the Beaufort Bill, eh?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
I had fun.
This is Jack Gallagher and
Yeah, Fred had fun.
NEP, all the bad words.
Sure.
What I've got here is a wee story about the poem that Burns wrote back in 1784 when he was at the Moskiel farm just outside Mauchline. And this is called The Bells of Mauchline. So, who were the bells and where is Mauchline? For those of you a wee bit familiar with Scotland, it's a village situated about 12 miles northeast of Ayr and 9 miles southeast of Kilmarnock. Burns and his brother Gilbert moved to Mauchline in 1784 after the death of their father. So they took over the tenancy of his farm, Moskiel Farm. Now, in addition to farming, Burns led a really busy life because he continued to write poems and songs and I guess you could say build on his celebrity status. The poem is about 6 women who lived in the village. It's unclear what the motive was for him to write the poem, or even why he chose the particular women mentioned, except of course for one, and that was of course Jean Armour. Looks like this was his second attempt because his first attempt at capturing the descriptions of local beauties was written in 1778 as the Tarbolton Lassies. There he mentions Peggy, Sophie, Maisie, Jenny, and Bessie. The Mauchline Bells. In Mauchline there dwells 6 proper young bells, the pride of the place and its neighbourhood all. Their carriage and dress a stranger would guess, in London or Paris they'd gotten it all. Miss Miller is fine, Miss Markland's divine, Miss Smith she has wit, and Miss Betty is braw. There's beauty and fortune to get, wee Miss Morton, but Armour's the jewel of them all. For the remainder of the year, 1784, Burns seemed to want to build on his reputation as a celebrity and an attraction for the local lasses. He used to wear a green and navy plaid, and it was very often in an unusual fashion. He'd wrap it around his shoulders in defiance of the conventional mode, and was reputedly the only man in the village who wore his hair long, tied back, and he enjoyed doing this especially when attending the church. Burns then had added to his celebrity status by assuming the role of the rake, or Rob Miskeal, as identified in his song, "O Leave Your Novels, You Mauchline Bells," which was written later in 1784, after the actual Mauchline Bells poem. "O leave novels, you Mauchline bells, you're safer at your spinning wheel. Such witching books are baited hooks for rakish looks like Rob Miskeal. your fine Tom Jones and Grandisons, they make your youthful fancies real. They heat your brains and fire your veins, and then you pray for Rob Mesquil. Beware a tongue that smoothly hung, a heart that warmly seems to feel. That feeling heart but acts a part to rakish art in Rob Mesquil. The frank address, the soft caress, are worse than poisoned darts of steel. The frank address and politesse are all finesse for Rob Mesquil. It's generally agreed that Burns had some poetic license when investing the bells with the qualities that they didn't really possess in any great degree. In fact, Gilbert was heard to remark that there was often a great disparity between his fair captivator and her attributes. According to witnesses living at the time, only one belle could be considered a beauty. Of the rest, one was blind in one eye, another was badly marked with smallpox scars, and three were best described as somewhat ordinary in their attractiveness. So that left only one, who of course was Jean Armour. But Jean was regarded, actually, as the plainest of them all, but somehow she was able to capture the heart of Burns. The 6 Mauchline girls were Helen Miller, Jean Markland, Jean Smith, Betty Miller, Christina Morton, and Jean Armour. The first up, Helen Miller. Miss Miller is fine. Her other claim to fame being the Nell mentioned in the poem A Mauchline Wedding. She was the daughter of John Miller, who owned the Sioux Inn at Mauchline, and she might have been considered beautiful had it not been for the fact that she was blind in one eye, likely caused by a birth defect. She was, however, regarded as a good catch. The reason being, her brother Sandy had made his fortune in India and left her with a sizable dowry. In 1791, she married Burns' friend, Dr. John Mackenzie, who was the Mauchline village doctor, and died. She died many years later in Irvine, Ayrshire, in 1827. Next up, we have Jean Markland. When describing the second belle, Jean, as divine, it is generally acknowledged that Burns was using some poetic license, for she was generally considered to be just neat, with a fine figure, but a pleasant manner. Her claim to fame is through the poem To a Louse, as it is generally considered to be in Jean's bonnet whilst in the church that Burns saw a crawling fairly and led to the incomparable opening lines of the poet's final verse. Oh, what some power the gift to gie us, to see ourselves as others see us. The only other connection between Burns and Jean is through the man she was later to marry, James Finlay, who you may recall was an excise officer from Darbolton, and he was the man responsible for providing training and instructions to Burns in gauging and bookkeeping, which were part of his excise duties. Then we have Jean Smith. It would appear that Burns was accurate in his description of Jean Smith, for she was the witty one of the Bells. But unfortunately, examples of her wit and writings are unavailable. Little is known about Jean's relationship with Burns, except that she was the sister of Burns' youthful friend, James Smith. A further connection was through her marriage to James Candlish, and he was an Edinburgh lecturer in medicine. And he met Burns first of all when they attended the Dalrymple Parish School in the summer of 1772. Burns was heard to describe James as the earliest friend except my brother that I have on earth, and one of the worthiest fellows that ever any man could call by the name of friend. James died suddenly at age 46 and left Jean struggle with 4 children and fend for herself. Jean was obviously a very resourceful woman. As she moved from Edinburgh to Glasgow, don't know why she would do that, but there we go, and ran a successful finishing school for young ladies. She did that along with bringing up all her kids. She died in 1854, outliving all of the other Bells. Then comes along Betty Miller. In the poem, she is described as Miss Betty Isbrough, and it would appear she might have been, but for her face suffering the ravages of smallpox. She was the daughter of John Miller and a sister of Helen Miller, one of the other Bells. Burns wrote a number of letters which show some degree of affection, but nothing too serious, given that Jean Armour was also in the picture. She married a merchant from Mauchline called William Templeton, but died in 1795 at the birth of her first child, Eliza. The main connection to Burns is actually through the song from the Eliza, I Must Go, which was inspired by her to Burns, and it's generally agreed that Betty is the Eliza referred to in the song. From thee, Eliza, I must go, and from my native shore, the cruel fates between us throw a boundless ocean's roar. But boundless oceans roaring wide, between my love and me, they never, never can divide my heart and soul from thee. Then we have Christina Morton, reputed to be the most attractive of the Bells. There's beauty and fortune to get wee Miss Morton, is the line. But she was also considered quite a wealthy woman, having inherited £500. Interestingly, according to Blackie's edition of Burns, Christina did in fact have a secret passion for the poet and was really quite disappointed when she showed a preference. Sorry, when he showed a preference for Jean. She ended up marrying a draper and general merchant, Robert Patterson, from Mauchline, from whom she had 4 sons and 2 daughters. Finally, we come to Jean. Jean was a 6th Bell and described as the jewel of them all, although generally regarded as the plainest of them all. As we know, she bore Burns 9 children, the last one being born on the day of his funeral. Unfortunately, only 3 of the children survived her. She seems to have been a generous, compliant woman, willing to put up with even his wildest extravagances. Such an extravagance being the fact that she took in his bastard daughter by Anna Park with that famous remark, "Oh, Robbie should have had 12 wives." She was reputed to be quite the singer, with a clear singing voice, but also not considered to be quite her husband's intellectual equal. Interesting. There is no known portrait of Jean until she actually became an old granny. Nothing exists of her younger days. Burns wrote, in all, 14 songs, commonly associated with Jean. One of my favorites being Parnassus Hill. Burns, however, really liked of all the airts the wind can blow. And it's a special song, I guess, because he wrote it to compliment Jean. Guess that's it, guys. An abbreviated version. There we go.
Well done.
Excellent. Well done. Very good.
Thank you, Ian.
Hello.
Hi, Jim. Are you up, ready to go for your presentation? I think you got to mute, you got to turn your microphone off or on.
Yeah, they're generally muted while the main speaker's speaking.
Yes.
So
Does he
Jim-
have to make the move? There you
I've
go.
done
Great.
it now. I've done it now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Evening, gentlemen. This evening, I've got 3 little pieces to fill up my 10 minutes. And since this is December, I thought it would be appropriate to share with you a special Christmas rhyme. However, there's a story to this, which I have to tell you first. I joined the Department of Justice, Alberta Department of Justice in 1980. And I was the manager of court services for Southern Alberta and Calgary. And so I had to go up to Edmonton a lot and so on. So anyway, starting in about 1990, I started to write some rhymes, and usually humorous things about what had happened within our group. One of them, for example, being when I was chased by a rutting elk at a conference in Banff, things like that. So anyway, I got this reputation for being a rhymer. And in 1990, I got a call from my boss who said, we've got this, they had a corporate Christmas card that they sent out each year to the senior judiciary and to other heads of departments in Alberta, the Alberta government, and other high poobahs. So I was asked to write a Christmas rhyme to go in the corporate Christmas card, which was fine, and I did that for the next 3, 4, 5 years, for the next several years. But anyway, in 1994, I was up in Edmonton. It was towards the end of the year, and I was up in Edmonton, and I bumped into the deputy minister. And he said, Jim, he says, we're putting together the Christmas card for this year, he says, and we're behind. and we need to get on with it. And I've got the communications people working on it. So we need this rhyme from you, right? As soon as you can get it. So I said, okay, fine, fine. So I went back to Calgary. And it just so happened at that time that I became acquainted with Robert Burns's Ode to Spring. And I don't know if how many of you are familiar with that, but it's a very clever poem. However, it's a baudry verse or poem. And I was taken by a couple of phrases in his Ode to Spring that kind of shaped my approach to writing this poem to go into the Christmas card. So I'm going to share that with you now. I called it Santa's Workshop. 'Twas Christmas Eve and Santa's elves were busy at their benches. Across the room at work themselves were Santa's elfin wenches. Young Toby's mind began to drift, enraptured by his Jean. He'd promised her a nice wee gift, and she was keen as keen. This Toby was a handsome lad, as much as elves can be. And Jean herself was not half bad, a pretty elf was she. They trysted 'neath the Christmas tree, as jingle bells did play. Oh, what fun, sang Jean with glee, let's jingle all the way. Toby fucked with all his might, his rhythm was sublime. The beat of jingle bells just right, as Toby's arse kept time. But in her joy, Jean jerked, alas, poor Toby cried, too soon, and so our lad mistimed his arse, and came quite out of tune. On Christmas Day, folks, ring that chime, but check beneath the tree, for Jean and Toby beating time in two-part harmony. So anyway, a couple of days after I sent this, okay, but this was back in the days when we faxed things, and a couple of days later, I got a note from the Deputy Minister saying, to the effect, Jim, I enjoyed your Christmas rhyme, he said, but do you have an alternative? And of course I did have. And the alternative read as follows. Old 94 is all but gone, Laetes triumphantes. Young 95 will come anon, venite adoremus. Our thanks for all your kind support, your patience and goodwill. The coming year, we can report, will turn out better still. May Christmas bring you happiness, and like the Yuletide fire, give comfort, warmth, contentedness, and all your heart's desire. So he did prefer that one, and that's the one that went in the Christmas card. So there you are.
Very good. You're lucky you didn't end up in jail.
Well, I was saying, as part of my little spiel, I was going to say, fortunately, he had a sense of humor, and I didn't get fired. There you are. Anyway, the second piece I'd like to do is, it actually was the very first poem I ever wrote back in 1989. And I was triggered into doing this by a tragedy, the Tiananmen Square massacre. And I was very upset by this, as most people were. And there were a lot of other things going on in the world, which were really pretty bad at that time. And but then when I was looking at what I should do tonight, I realized that what I'm saying in this poem could be applied to exactly to today's situation with this pandemic and the number of deaths, and especially if you look south to the US, the terrible things that are going on there, the hatreds, the divisions, the white supremacy problem, and on and on and on. And so this almost disastrous world that we seem to be living in at the present time was the subject of my poem. Now, just so you can understand a little bit, one of the references in the poem is to evangelists, and that was referring to Jim and Tammy Baker at the time, who were accused of stealing money from their church, huge amounts by fraud, and he was accused of rape, and then he was paying hush money out of the church funds and so on. He ended up going to jail. So that was the reference there. So I'll read the poem. A world so filled with cark and care, each day brings tidings grim. We kill, we rape, we soil the earth, and follow every whim. What hope is there for all of us who fret and know distress? Who wonders how our children's young will cope with all the mess? That crime is rife and morals lax, and caring's out of style, and family life is under siege. Beware the blackguard's smile. We cannot hearken to the past, that time was wicked too, though surely we can strive to learn and know what not to do. With threats of war and civil strife and storm clouds rolling in, what silver linings can we find? When will the good begin? To hold that man is good and just, that all of this will pass. Can we dare hope for better times? How can we wish for less? When politicians flaunt our trust, their tongues turned inside out. When lawyers cloud our daily lives, no wonder that we doubt. And now withal, so sad to tell, evangelists must join the list of sordid ne'er-do-wells who worship only coin. Is all so lost, is all forlorn, must we surrender thus? Where is the friendly, honest soul? Perhaps in all of us. Each one must search within himself, and surely he will find a wise and simple graciousness and love of humankind. That's it, gents. That's that one.
Very good.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to finish off with just a short one, which isn't nearly so depressing as the last one. It's basically a sweet little poem that I was inspired to write this one when I read something by William Souter, who was a Scottish poet back in the first half of the 19th century. And he had written this poem called The Tryst. And so I thought it was a lovely little poem. And it was written in the Scottish dialect, very strong Lowlands dialect. Anyway, I liked the poem but most of all the theme, the theme he had for it. So I decided to write my own version of this. I didn't copy anything from him. I just followed the theme. So I've called it Fair and Lovely. She was fair and she was lovely. She came a while to stay. With quiet step she crossed the floor and sweetly with me lay. Obscuring darkness filled the room, yet all of her I knew. My every sense with hers entwined, no eye could see so true. No sound disturbed our wakefulness, and little did we speak. I only heard the soughing breeze and her breath upon my cheek. Her heart beat fast against my own, no less was mine becalmed. If this be sin and God offend, then let my soul be damned. Across the fields a church bell's toll presaged our last caress, a harbinger of coming morn and thief of happiness. She was fair and she was lovely, and sweetly with me lay. The darkness brought her to me once, the dawn stole her away. That's it, gentlemen.
Very nice. I don't think Burns could have done any better on that one. That's very good.
Thank you.
Okay, then I think we're going to switch over to George, and you're going to give us a presentation that apparently this is a pretty good one.
Hi there, folks. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Everybody hear me? Good. It's a funny accent you probably hear. It's an Ayrshire accent, but it doesn't seem to have disappeared over the last 45 years that I've been in Canada. Anyway, since Halifax is the home base for Canada's Atlantic fleet, I thought an article I found some time ago about Canada's Navy might be most appropriate. And this was entitled Canada's New Navy. And it highlights the fact that the Canadian Navy is very, very proud of this new fleet. So having initially named the first two ships HMCS Daring and HMCS Dauntless, the naming committee has, after intensive pressure from the civil liberties groups, renamed them HMCS Cautious and HMCS Prudence. The next 5 ships are to be named Empathy, Circumspect, Nervous, Timorous, and Apologist. They cost about $850 million each, and they meet the needs of the 21st century and comply with the very latest employment, health and safety, and human rights laws. The new user-friendly Crow's Nest comes equipped with wheelchair access, and live ammunition has been replaced with paintballs to reduce the risk of anyone getting hurt and to cut down on the number of compensation claims. Stress counselors and lawyers will only be on duty 24 hours a day, and each ship will have its own industrial tribunal. The crew ratio will be 50% men and 50% women, balanced in accordance with the latest PMO's directives on race, gender, sexual preference, and disability. Sailors will have to work only a maximum of 37 hours a week in line with the health and safety rules, even in wartime. All the vessels will come equipped with a maternity ward and nursery situated on the same deck as the gay disco. Tobacco will be banned throughout the fleet, but cannabis will be allowed in the wardroom and the ratings messes. Of course, the Navy is very eager to shed its traditional reputation for rum, sodomy, and the lash, so all that has gone with the occasional rum ration, which is to be replaced with sparkling water. Although sodomy continues, it has now been extended to include all ratings under 18 years of age. The lash should still be available, but only upon request. Condoms can be obtained from the bosun in a variety of flavors, except Capstan full strength. Saluting officers has been abolished because it's deemed elitist, and it has to be replaced with the more informal, "Hello, sailor." All information on notice boards will be printed in 37 different languages. Crew members will now no longer be required to ask permission to grow beards or moustaches, and this applies equal to female crew members. The newly renamed HMS Cautious is due to be commissioned soon, in fact, and it's in a ceremony conducted by Her Majesty the Queen's representative, Captain Hook from the Finsbury Park Mosque in London, who will break a petrol bomb over the hull. Our first deployment will be to escort boatloads of illegal immigrants across the Pacific to ports on Canada's west coast. The Prime Minister has said that whilst these ships reflect the very latest in modern thinking, they are also capable of being upgraded to comply with any new legislation coming out of Ottawa. His final words were, "Canada waives the rules." Thank you, gentlemen.
God bless the new Navy.
Wow. You guys are pretty talented. You'll have to forego next year, perhaps your Burns night, and come to Halifax, and we'll put you on for our entertainment on our dinner night.
I'm sure we could get a government grant for that.
Yes, and you probably could take a Navy boat and you could go through the Arctic or go through the Panama if you want to come around and have a vacation at the same time. Well, I think we're going to move on now. We are going to have a little bit of singing by our very talented Alan Manchester. And Alan normally this time of year is out singing in choirs all around Halifax and the malls, parties, bars, you name it. This guy is famous with his group of Christmas carolers, and he's probably in a couple of Christmas plays. But like every musician in the Atlantic provinces, they're all unemployed. Every bar is closed, every musical venue is now inoperative. But we're lucky we got Alan with us tonight, and hopefully his voice should be in good form. He's not going to be hoarse. So, Alan, the floor is yours, and you can tell us about what you're going to sing.
Yes, I'll be doing A Fond Kiss, and I'll get started. Yes, unfortunately, I've actually had one gig. That was a 4-hour-long one, and believe you me, I found out how out of use my voice was. I had to be, fortunately it was down at the farmer's market. So I ran on our first break, I ran over and got a bottle of apple cider to try with the acid to try and clear the voice up. But oh my heavens, that was a trial by fire, that one was. And I had one recording session. But that's it. Normally by now I would have had about 15 or so gigs and another 10 or so to come. But it's been one of those years. Anyway, A Fond Kiss. A fond kiss and then we sever. A farewell that lasts forever. Deep in heart-wrung tears I'll pledge thee, warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee. Who shall say that fortune grieves him, while the star of hope she leaves him? Me a cheerful twinkle lights me, dark despair around benights me. I'll nae blame my partial fancy, nothing could resist my Nancy, but to see her was to love her, love but her, and love forever. Had we never loved, say kindly, had we never loved, say blindly, never met or never parted, we had ne'er been broken-hearted. Fare thee will, thou first and fairest, fare thee will, thou best and dearest, thine be ilka joy and treasure, peace, enjoyment, love, and pleasure. A fond kiss and then we sever, a farewell and lasts forever. Deep in heart-wrung tears I'll pledge thee, warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee. Hope that came through.
Great, thanks, Alan. Sounds great. I just, while I'm listening to you, I wish my piano was here to back you up. So.
Oh, that's all right.
Soon, it will happen soon. Okay, and now we're going to move on to Bill Forster, who's going to introduce one of our new agenda items for entertainment. We're going to be doing this on a regular basis. So, Bill, tell us about what you're going to do and what everybody needs to get prepared for.
Well, first of all, it was a great pleasure to have the three guys from Calgary. I've been great friends with Ian for a lot of years. We worked together, we played soccer together, we drank together. Jim and I were accepted as members of the Calgary Burns Club on the first night, and we shared a room for a month when we appeared at the Edinburgh Military Tattoo in 2009. But as Jim said, everything that happened in Edinburgh should stay in Edinburgh, so I won't talk about the times we spent in the room. I don't know George as well, but I heard that he was a raconteur of the First Order, and he proved that tonight. So it was a pleasure to have you guys here. The last Zoom meeting of the Calgary Burns Club included a presentation by Colin Pinkerton titled "What's in a Name?", in which he discussed the history of Scottish surnames. And I thought, why not change it a little bit and ask members of our club to present a short history of their surname and any interesting ancestors. And as I found out today when I was trying to cobble this together, it's a bit of a stretch trying to do that in 10 minutes, but it's interesting. I encourage everybody to try and put together a presentation in the future. And we have some interesting surnames in our club, such as Lewandowski, Sylvester, Lefleur, as well as a full complement of Max, etc. Now, I had 3 Scottish grandparents, Ruth MacLean from Mull, Helen Boyd from Skye, and John Peyton from Kirkintilloch. But my father was born near Liverpool in England, and so tonight I'll talk about the name that I inherited from him. Forster. The Forsters were first mentioned in the 11th or the 12th century in the border counties, and they're still concentrated in numbers in southern Scotland and northern England, but subsequently spread all over the world. Now, his family originally came from Bamborough in Northumberland, and my cousin Michael, a historian, decided a number of years ago to trace the Forster family tree, and the last I spoke to him, he was back in the 1300s. But for me, the most interesting part of the family tree was from the early 14th century until the Union of the Crowns, which I seem to remember was in 1606. But anyway, the family was part of the phenomenon known as the Border Reivers. And one of our guests tonight, Jim McLaughlin, recently wrote a paper on the Reivers, and I was talking to him about it, and he said, yes, I thought of you, Bill, and all of those thieving, murdering bastards that you were descended from. But anyway, they were the families that populated the counties either side of the Anglo-Scottish border, whose lifestyle for more than a couple of centuries was raiding, stealing, cattle rustling, violent and often fatal robberies. They were essentially the same people. Northumbria, the Kingdom of Northumbria, at its zenith, bordered the Firth of Forth and the Western Ayrshire coast, way down to the Wash and the Mersey in England. And after William the Conqueror's harrowing of the North, thousands of refugees poured into Scotland and never returned. So the genetic makeup of people in southern Scotland and northern England are very, very similar. And the principal allegiance of these families was to neither England nor Scotland. It was to the family name, with resulting alliances and feuds. And Malcolm Gladwell wrote in his book, Outliers, he attributes family feuds in Kentucky and Tennessee and other places to where the inhabitants of those places originally came from. And they were settled overwhelmingly by immigrants from one of the world's most ferocious cultures of honor. That is, from the lowlands of Scotland, the northern counties of England, and Ulster in Northern Ireland. The borderlands, as this region were known, were remote and lawless territories that had been fought over for hundreds of years. The people of the region were steeped in violence. They were herdsmen, scraping out a living on that rocky and infertile land. They were clannish, responding to the harshness and turmoil of their environment by forming tight family bonds and placing loyalty to blood above all else. And in George MacDonald Fraser's excellent book, The Story of the Anglo-Scottish Border Reivers, the Steel Bonnets, he outlines the history of the principal families: Armstrongs, Bells, Charltons, Elliots, Fenwicks, Forsters, Grahams, Milburns, Robsons, Scotts, and many others. And looking through our membership list, I noticed that there are at least 3 or 4 of our members with border surnames, Reiver surnames. Probably the most colourful of my ancestors was Sir John Forster, who was the Sheriff of Northumberland in the 16th century and one of 12 successive governors of Bamburgh Castle and a warden of the English Middlemarch for nearly 40 years. And Fraser wrote of him in his book. Sir John Forster, 1502 to 1602, was an extraordinary English borderer, held the Middlemarch wardenship for almost 35 years with only one brief break. He was over 100 when he died, had 23 children, and having lived almost exactly through the 16th century and seen every aspect of border life, no one was more experienced or sunk in frontier affairs than Forster. Unfortunately, although he was outstandingly brave, his honesty was seldom out of question. And Alistair Moffat, in his book, The Reivers, also wrote about Sir John. And he said, Sir John Forster was exceptional. Making his debut appearance as Warden of the English Middlemarch in 1558, he held the office off and on for nearly 40 years, living to an immense age, probably 101. Old Sir John was at the centre of border politics for the whole of the second half of the 16th century. He was clearly a rogue, what might now be generously termed a pragmatist, in the period when reaving spread like an epidemic. But Forster was also attractive, clever, unscrupulous, kind, a spade caller, and fiercely loyal. Probably a little bit like myself. And he might be described as the epitome of the age, a reaver's reaver. After all of that, I also read in Fraser's book that in 1592 in Cumberland alone, 102 men were outlawed. Apart from the Grahams, there were mostly Forsters, Hetheringtons and Irvins. And in the same period, 79 Cumbrians were indicted for murder. The principal offenders, again, being Forsters, Hetheringtons and Grahams. But I'm pleased to think that after approximately 20 plus generations, I have probably inherited less than 1/4% of his DNA. But it's also nice to know that it's probably been balanced by the DNA of the peaceful, passive Scottish Highland and Lowland ancestors of my family. Another colourful ancestor was Sir Thomas Forster. He was the son of another sheriff of Northumberland. And he was a supporter of the 1715 Jacobite rebellion, which was surprising as he was a staunch Protestant. He was appointed by the Pretender as the general of a predominantly Scottish Jacobite army raised in the borders, and predictably, as he had no known military experience, they were decisively beaten on their march into England at Preston. In fact, he surrendered. I think before the fighting actually began, he was taken aback by the sight of an English army. He was imprisoned at Newgate Jail, and before he could be beheaded, his sister Dorothy sensationally broke him out of jail, and they went into exile in France. In the booklet, A History of Northumberland, published, not the booklet, the book, A History of Northumberland, a real book, as you can see, The History of Northumberland, there were over 200 references to the Forsters. And yet, until my cousin did the tracing of the family tree about 20 years ago, I'd never heard of the Reivers. I'd never heard of the Border Reivers. And now their houses, castles, and battlefields are a huge tourist attraction in the border counties. And when I learned of the Reivers, my wife Kate and I went on a visit to Bamburgh Castle and stayed at the Castle Arms in the village. The lounge bar was called Forster's Bar, and they had a booklet on sale titled Dorothy and the Forsters of Bamburgh. One page read, "The Forsters have to be regarded as one of the great families of Northumberland. with family members in prominent positions in government, lieutenant governors, sheriffs, county barristers, etc. And they were awarded Bamburgh Castle by Queen Elizabeth I for services to the crown, which probably meant fighting the Scots, even though Sir John Forster was criticised for being very pro-Scots and developed alliances with many Scottish families. But anyway, they squandered their inheritance due to drink and gambling. And I think my wife, Kate, summed it up perfectly when she said, "Nothing really changes in your family, does it?" So that's, I think, 8 minutes. So that's enough from me tonight. But I hope that other members of the club take up the challenge. And in the months ahead, we have a number of presentations by other members giving us a little history of their surnames. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Now we know all about you, so you better watch it at the meetings because we're going to take you to task on some of these things. Very good. So we're near the end of our meeting tonight, and before we say a few words and have our last event, I'd like to just open the floor. Does anybody have anything they'd like to pass on for the Christmas season? Any advice about COVID? What bar can we go to? What time do you shop at the shopping center? Anybody want to say anything before we kind of wrap up the night?
Friendly floor.
Jim,
I shipped Deirdre off to Newfoundland to visit her mother 2 days before the border closed. So cursed be the man that pours rich in life, the crouching vassal to the tyrant wife, who has no opinion but by her suggestion, and hasn't tuppence but her possession. Were such be the woman to be my part, I break her spirit and I break her heart. I tame her on the magic of a switch. I kiss her maids and kick the Bavara's bitch. I can only say that because she's out of town.
Oh, well, you got to cook your own food now. Anybody else?
I'll cook the turkey anyway.
Okay.
Before I click my mute, I just would like to say, Jim McLaughlin particularly, it's really good to have met you over this. I'm looking at a verse of Jim's from a couple of years ago, which I would like just to throw in. The Scots invented everything, or so it has been said, man. Though scarcely true, some credits due, our pride is well deserved, man. We've made the world a better place, it's been our guiding creed, man. Whereas like us, precious few we say, and master him a deed, man. Jim, that was beautiful words. Cheers.
Calgary Club, yes.
I was on mute, I think, Gordon.
Oh, is he? Okay. Who would like to say something here?
Sir Bud there would like
Bud?
to say something. He's not.
I just unmuted you there, sir.
I would like to say something. I'd like to thank the Halifax Club for their kind invitation. I'm sure the Calgary members have enjoyed their visit, and we are looking forward to the next meeting, which I understand is being contemplated for early in the coming year, perhaps even in January. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
You're welcome, and thank you. Isn't it interesting that we can make new friends over this silly thing called Zoom, eh? I mean,
Yes, indeed.
new.
Yep. And long lost friends like Fred and Bill Scott. So good to see those guys.
Just
Yeah.
a comment. I see a face that I don't know. It's called iPad 249, and he must be a Calgary guy. So whoever you are, hi. And welcome.
Good to see you, Dennis. You're looking.
Hi, yes, I'm from Calgary. You can tell from the accent I'm not from Scotland, but I've been a member of the Calgary Burns Club for many years now, and I thoroughly enjoyed the evening. And I guess I'm riding on the Carney groups, which is a group we have in Calgary, coattails for attending this evening. So many thanks for the invitation. Many more, I trust.
Well, that's great. Well, Oh, George, got a few words to say.
Yeah, just a final word, fellas. Thank you very much for inviting us. I've thoroughly enjoyed the evening, and I hope there'll be a few more of those, even when COVID goes away.
Yes, and maybe the next time we'll get together in person.
All the best, fellas.
But Gordon, we aren't finished yet. Aren't we having a medley of songs from Richard?
Yeah. Oh, yes, we're still working on that. Yep, that's our last item. Yep. Well, just before we go to our last item, I certainly want to thank the Calgary contingent. Good to see those guys, and realize that just because we don't have oil down here, we got really good fish. And I know our lobster's selling for $19 a pound in Calgary. You can get it on the Warfare for $6. If you buy 20 pounds, they'll give it to you for $4. And with the same with our scallops that are the size of dinner plates that we get off of George's Bank. So we got lots to offer still down here, and there's lots of land, and it's dirt cheap. And so come and visit us sometime.
Gordon, I just wanted to finally just talk about something that Brent mentioned at the outset. Was I don't know if everyone's aware, but there's a new book that's come out called The Riotous Passions of Robbie Burns. It was published in the 1st of December. I haven't read it yet. I've downloaded it on Kindle and I'm going to do it, but I just wanted to read the little summary here just to kind of encourage people to maybe have a look at it, because it's quite interesting, particularly what we've been talking about tonight. It says, poet, romantic lover and carouser, Robert Burns blazed into Edinburgh in 1786 like a comet. The seat of the Scottish Enlightenment was electrified by the arrival of the ploughman poet and his free-thinking accounts of 18th century peasant life. But while Burns' tender heart was often set alight, he found his love poems failed to have the desired effect on the lively half of mankind, as the capital's refined ladies kept this force of nature at arm's length. Join Burns on his adventures in this historical novella, told through the eyes of his young companion, John Bruce. And I love this bit. It says, in a town where you could hit 50 geniuses, 50 bankers, 50 lawyers, and 50 rogues with a pistol at any given hour, meet the infamous Deacon Brodie and the Crocklin Fencibles drinking club, and learn the cause of the rift between the poet and his young prodigy, Clorinda, inspiration for one of his finest love tales, A Fond Kiss. So that's The Riotous Passions of Robbie Burns. It was published just a few days ago by author is John Ivison, and it's only $7.50 on paperback. So I'm pretty sure it'll be a good read, and I'd encourage everyone to get a copy.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, for our last event of the evening, Richard Sylvester is going to give us a little discussion, but and a song, and of course he'll wrap up with the star. And so, Richard, let me pass it off to you. And so let me wish everyone a Merry Christmas and spend it with your family, yeah, because you got no choice. Don't fight. If you feel like fighting, have a couple of drinks, and if it still feels like fighting, drink until you hit the bed. So.
Well, thank you very much, El Presidente, Gordon McFader. And I'd just like to welcome Ian and Jim and George to our fold. And we're going to give you a little bit of East Coast entertainment along with the songs that I'm going to put into a medley. There's 6 songs, just a sample of which we have been singing to the various respites and hospitals around Nova Scotia and Halifax and Dartmouth for the last 20 years. We've actually made over 200 performances in that time. And three members of our club who passed away this year were very strong supporters of our choir. Captain Angus MacDonald, Life Honourable Member, just passed away. He was very often a lot older than the people he used to sing to. Andrew Forsyth, co-founder of the club, along with Billy Forster from Calgary, also was the inspiration of what we call the Orpheist Choir, which in fact was a derivation of Orpheus choir, heavenly choir. We weren't quite heavenly in that our octave range was only about 1.5 chords, as opposed to 7. So we refer to ourselves, thanks to Andy, as the Orpheus choir. And then Edwin Miller, who passed away just last month, was also a firm member of the Halifax Orpheus choir as well. So for you guys out west, I've added one little song in there called Farewell to Nova Scotia. We'll do a little bit of that. It'll take about 5 minutes, and it's 6 songs all together. Let me start. Oh, Scots were hey with Wallace bred, Scots when Bruce has often led. Oh, welcome to your gory bed, or to history. How's the day and now's the hour, see the frontal battle hour, see approach proud Edward's power, chains and slavery. Speed, bonny bold, like a bird on the wing, on with the sailor's cry. Carry the lad that's born to be king, over the sea to sky. Burned are our homes, exiled in death, scattered the loyal man. Yet the sword, cool in the sheath, cast Charlie will come again. Speed, bonny bold, like a bird on the wing, on with the sailor's cry. Carry that lad that's born to be king, over the sea to sky. Is there for honest poverty that hangs his head, and all that the coward slavey passing by? We dare be poor for all that, for all that, and all that, our toils obscure, and all that. The rank is but the guinea stamp, the man's a man for all that. You see on Berkey Corder, Lord, what struts and stares and all that. Though hundreds worship at his word, he's just a coof for all that, for all that, and all that. The ribbon star and all that. The man with an independent mind. He looks and laughs at all that. Ye Jacobites by name, ye Jacobites by name, ye Jacobites in name, lend an ear. Ye Jacobites by name, your doctrines are my blame. Oh, you will hear, you will hear, you will hear what makes heroic strife fames afar. Ye Jacobites by name, ye Jacobites by name, ye names, your faults I will proclaim. Ye Jacobites by name. So farewell to Nova Scotia, the sea-born. Let your mountains dark and drear I be. For when I am far away on the briny ocean tossed, will ye ever heave a sigh or a wish for me? Oh, well, the sun was setting in the west. The birds were singing on every tree. All nature seemed inclined to rest, but still there was no rest for me. The drums they do beat and the war's to alarm. The captain calls and I must obey. So farewell, farewell to Nova Scotia's charms, for it's early in the morning and it must away. So farewell to Nova Scotia, the sea-bound coast. Let your mountains dark and dreary be. For when I'm far away on that briny ocean tossed, will you ever heave a sigh or a wish for me? There is a star whose dreaming ray is shed on every clime. It shines by night, it shines by day, and ne'er grows dim with time. It rose upon the banks of Ayr, and it shone on Doon's clear stream. 200 years agone and mair, yet brightly grows its beam. Let kings and courtiers rise and fall, this world has many turns, yet brightly beams aboon them all. The star of Robbie Burns. Gentlemen all!
Woo! Great. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, everyone, and Merry Christmas, and especially the Calgary guys. Wow, that was great. We hope we could do it again sometime. Thanks, everybody else. Thanks, Brent. Thanks, Stuart. And
Good seeing you.
Thanks, guys. Everyone.
we'll see you all next month, early on.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Okay, guys. Well done, Richard.
Nothing compared to you.